At last, I've found it! The ancient sarcophagus containing the cards that will make Yugi's deck playable!
Good afternoon, Jank enthusiasts. I'm MBT, and this is 10-minute testing. Okay, let me guess. If you clicked this video, one of two things has happened to you. Either you're a loyal MBT subscriber here to make the sacrifice of watching another TMT on your phone before you go to bed, or, God forbid, you're a new player. Maybe you remember Yu-Gi-Oh! From your childhood, saw a new Dark Magician or something, and went all in on Shining Sarcophagus. For the former category, I wish you good luck on your 3 a.m. viewing habits, and for the latter category, I have some very bad news. The deck you've purchased is bad. It's comically bad. It was designed stem to stern to lure nubile duelists like you back into the rank forest of card gamery. But don't despair. I'm gonna do what I can to help you win a maximum of 10% of your games. Presenting Shining Sarcophagus.
But that's impossible!
So here's the list, and you wouldn't believe how much massaging we had to do. As always, I'll give you a background about the archetype, a little bit of a discussion about what I hope the deck can do, and of course the card by card. But first, this video is sponsored by Yu-Gi-Oh! Pro Deck. Yu-Gi-Oh! Pro Deck is a one-stop shop for all things Yu-Gi-Oh! They're responsible for the pack opener that makes series like Progression possible. They've got strategy articles for those looking to flesh out their fundamentals. They're the most complete repository of deck lists and results from regionals and YCSs online. And they've also got cube and draft infrastructure that's finally seeing use now that Yu-Gi-Oh! Players have come to the light of Limited. There's a good chance that any Yu-Gi-Oh! Content you see on YouTube has Yu-Gi-Oh! Pro Deck's many tendrils somewhere within its DNA. So why not go to the source and improve your game, draft with friends, or just see what 11-year-olds are playing in their Blue Eyes decks this month. Head on over to YGOPRODECK.com. Now back to the video. With that, let's settle into Shining Sarcophagus. Over the past few years, Konami has had to rankle with the fact that Yugi and Atem are two different people. The Dark Magician and his associated companions, the Egyptian gods, and Blackluster Soldier are all really the Pharaoh's monsters. And as Yugi comes into his own in a life where he is no longer being possessed by a leather daddy, he has to forge his own identity. Playing off the ceremonial duel that disproved Christianity and returned Atem to Egyptian heaven, the monsters that Yugi plays in that game, Gandora, the Gadgets, Trap Monsters, Marshmallow, and the LV Soldier and Magician, have been squarely allocated to his deck. As a result, they've received a lot of attention and a dozen retrains over the years, but it wasn't until Lead that they featured as the central theme of a pack instead of draft chaff. Shining Sarcophagus is the heart and soul of this strategy, with the ability to search any card that mentions it. Like the recently released Illusions, the availability of these cards means the necessary power level required to be playable is therefore way lower than that of other archetypes. Unfortunately, we still really haven't gotten much worth playing. Gadget Trio is a searcher, Gandora is a board wipe, and if you squint, the Silence are interaction, but that's not exactly enough in 2024. Because of that, we've got two options when deck building. Either go first and set up Dogmatica slop like it's 2020, or play Shifter and 18 pieces of non-engine. Guess which one we went with. There is a little synergy. Dark Magician, the Magician of Dark Magic, is a 7 that never really leaves the field, so you can do early 2024's Dracosac lines or make a Shangri-Era. And you make two spellcasters, so you might as well throw Dragoon in there as well. So with that, let's get into the card by card. First up, the Sark itself. This card can't be destroyed by monster effects, which is great news for those of you afraid of Ghost Ogre, and importantly can add a card that mentions the Sark from your deck to your hand during the main phase, and if your opponent special summons a monster from the graveyard, you can discard one spell, then target one of those monsters and send it to the graveyard. For monsters, we're on 3 Gadget Trio, which on normal or special summon adds a Shining Sark or a spell trap that mentions it from your deck to your hand, and has a float effect that we're not bothering with. 2 copies of Gandora G, the Dragon of Destruction, 300 for each banished card, and if you control Shining Sark can be specialed from the hand, you can pay half your life points to destroy as many cards on the field as possible, banish them, then summon a level 7 or lower monster that mentions Shining Sark from your deck, increasing its level by the number of cards destroyed by this effect. This will necessarily pump your silent monsters, and importantly, because this is a monster effect, your Sark will survive. We've got 2 copies of Dark Magician, the Magician of Black Magic, the actual name of this card. This card is a Dark Magician while on the field, and if a Shining Sarcophagus is on the field, it can be specialed from your hand. If destroyed by card effect and a level 5 or higher monster is on the field, you can special summon it, then set a spell trap from your deck that mentions Dark Magician. Our target of choice is going to be Secrets of Dark Magic, which allows us to perform a fusion summon using the Dark Magician that's on field. We will almost always be making this Dragoon you see in the extra. And then finally, wrapping up the monsters, we've got 2 copies of Silent Magician 0, which if your opponent draws a card, its level becomes increased by the number drawn. It gains attack equal to the increase of its level times 500, and if your opponent activates a spell card or effect while you control the Sarc, you can negate the activation and increase the card's level by 1. Playing 1 copy of Silent Swordsman 0, way worse, increases only during the standby phase and can negate the activation of cards that target a Shining Sarcophagus or a monster that mentions it you control. For the rest of our spell traps, we're playing 3 copies of Future Silence, which allows you to add a monster that mentions the Sarc from your deck to your hand. Then, if activated during the battle phase where you controlled the Shining Sarc and a monster that mentions it, makes each player draw until they have 6 cards in their hand. Usually, you're going to be using this to find something like a Gadget Trio to get your plays started, but occasionally, you will activate it during the battle phase in order to pump a Silent monster for lethal. 2 copies of Turn Silence, which is like a whack-ass Called by the Grave. You can target a face a monster you control, increase its level by 3, and if activated in response to an opponent's monster effect activation, while you have both Sarc and a monster that mentions it, that effect becomes negated. And this card can end the battle phase if you banish it from your grave during a battle after a Sarc monster does combat. Finally, we've got 1 copy of Ties That Bind, which just is 2 E-Tellies for monsters that mention Shining Sarc. The reason we're only playing 1 is because, boy, are we really rankling with the fact that modern Yu-Gi-Oh! Only lasts a turn and a half anyway. For the rest of our spells, we're on 2 copies of Small World and a Pot of Prosperity, and it's time for the non-engine 3 Fenrir and a Rise Heart. This is a great Small World bridge, but there's some stuff you can do with Dracosac. We've got 3 copies of Dimension Shifter, we've got 3 copies of Ash Blossom, 3 Effect Veiler, Called By, and triple Infinite Impermanence in the extra. We've got Artemis, we've got IP Masquerena, Barricadeborg Blocker, Dark, SP Little Knight, Nightmare Phoenix, Selena, Access Code Talker, and then Shangri-Ira, Dracosac, the Dad, Superstar Slayer, Typhon, Sky Crisis, Zeus, Dark Magician, the Dragon Knight, who theoretically we can make, and of course Red Eyes Dark Dragoon, our usual target for secrets. In the side, we've got the Bestial Boys, Fualos, Dark Ruler No More, Cosmic Cyclone, and Dimensional Barrier. So with that, let's check out some games. Our first match is up against Tenpai, and as you can see, we've opened pretty well. Our opponent has as well. We're going to begin with a copy of Gadget Trio, which is going to eat an Imperm. Thankfully for us, we have both the Silence and this copy of Shining Sarc. We're going to go for the Sarc and the DMD. We'll go for the effect of Gandora, and we will activate it in order to banish the entire board, then summon back this copy of the Dark Magician, and use its effect to set a copy of Secrets of Dark Magic. We'll activate the effect of Shining Sarc to get a copy of Turn Silence and pass our turn. Our opponent will draw for turn. We will go for the effect of the Silent Magician 0 and the effect of Secrets of Dark Magic, which will be met with a Dominus Impulse. Okay, no Dragoon. Next, our opponent's going to go for a Harpy's Feather Duster, which we will negate with our Silent Magician 0, which means they'll have free reign to activate the effect of our Lightning Storm. We'll increase the level of our Silent Magician 0 and just weep. Our opponent's going to go Chudra to Chudra, then go to the battle phase, trying to trigger as much as they can, but unfortunately for them, the copy of Turn Silence in the graveyard is going to cut their battle phase short. In main phase 2, they will go for this Bident Dragon, use its effect to bring back Pydra, and then sync off for a Transcendent. Finally, they will go for Kaimen, which we will negate with our Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring. We'll draw for turn, and hopefully we can clean this up. We're going to go for Gandora G in order to put everything into the banished zone. Then we'll activate the effect of the Gadget Trio and the effect of the DMD. We don't have anything else to set, but we can use Trio to get a copy of Shining Sarc. From here, we'll activate the effect of the Shining Sarc to get a copy of Ties That Bind. We'll go into an SP Little Knight, then activate the Ties That Bind to bring out both the Silent Swordsman 0 and the Magician as well. We'll go to the battle phase and attack twice, so they can't get back their monsters before setting this copy of Infinite Impermanence and hoping for the best. They find a Fadra, which hilariously would still do it, but for the Imperm we topped. So we'll go ahead and activate that, and hopefully this should be the end of the game. From this position, they are just going to go to the battle phase, main phase 2, and pass turn. Should be a hop, skip, and a jump to lethal here. We're going to increase the level of our Silent Swordsman 0 before going for Access Code Talker. Access Code to pop this copy of Fadra, go to the battle phase, and hit for 15 and 43. So as you can see, this deck has some pretty funny matchups. Our opponent for game 2 is on the other Nostalgia Bait archetype, Millennium, and you can see they've drawn okay, but mostly okay against a deck that's doing something normal. Against us, it might be a little different. They elect to go for Blue Eyes of the Heart rather than the Dimensional Shifter here, and then Wedju Temple, activate the effect of the Wedju Temple in order to set both the Dimension Shifter and the Sen Engine, which we will ash, before they fire off this copy of Millennium Ankh. Okay, we're going to have to deal with the unstoppable Exodia Incarnate. At end phase, they'll activate the effect of the Exodia Incarnate to set a copy of Exod, and we will draw for turn. From here, we're going to go ahead and activate Imperm, targeting the Exodia Incarnate, and go for the Fenrir, which should bait out out the fires. They'll activate Fires of Rage in order to clear our board, and we'll go Gadget Trio, activate the effect, and grab ourselves a Shining Sark. We'll go Shining Sark, and then we'll activate the effect of Gandora G in hand. We will, unfortunately for our opponent, activate the Turn Silence in response to the Blue Eyes of the Heart, then Gandora G to wipe the field, but for the Shining Sark. We'll get into a Dark Magician, the Magician of Dark Magic of Magic Knight, and then we will Ties the Bind off of this Shining Sark to get 2 cards to our side of the field. We'll pass back to our opponent, and I'm feeling pretty good about our ability to negate at least 1 Ankh in our opponent's hand. Unfortunately, as you can see, they have drawn a second one. They're going to lead with the first Ankh. That is worth a 0 in my eyes, but unfortunately for us, they have the second. They'll go Ankh in order to summon this copy of Exodia Incarnate, then Obliterate Blaze in order to power it up. They will take 4 here. We will Shining Sark. They will take 4 here. We will Shining Sark. And now that they've finished reading, we can go ahead and turn silent so we don't have to worry too much about what's going on, but for the negation of the unstoppable Exodia Incarnate. Okay, well, that was a very strangely played battle phase from both of us, but we should be able to clean up from here. SP Little Knight banished the unstoppable Exodia Incarnate, Shining Sarcophagus to get a copy of Silent Magician 0 and contest something like, I don't know, like the 5th copy of Ankh. We'll pass back to our opponent, increase the attack of the Silent Magician 0. They'll go to the battle phase, main phase 2, end phase, and we should be able to wipe it up. We draw for turn. We'll go for the effect of the Shining Sark. We do still have a Gandora in deck. We'll activate the effect of the Gandora, and then, of course, we'll activate the effect on field, going down to 1900 as we wipe the entire field and go into another Dark Magician, the Dragon Knight. Let's get in for 25, and finally clap this one together. So it's time for game 3, and you know what that means, a best of 3 versus meta. Our opponent's on Fiendsmith, Azamina, Snake Eyes, and well, this is a strange hand from them and a great one from us. 3 pieces of interaction looks good. They're going to begin with a copy of Bonfire. That's going to grab them an Ash. They'll go Ash. We'll go Imperm, and thankfully they can't leverage that called by here. From here, they're going to go for a Diabell Star and activate the effect, which will be met with a Veiler. They will called by the Veiler, and unfortunately, we are going to have to contend with whatever this Diabell Star gets. Down comes Deception. They will activate the effect of the Deception, and we will Ash Blossom it. They are left on nothing, and we are left with 2 cards in hand, which are just going to have to get it done. That's a great rip. We're going to begin with this Pot of Prosperity, finding off the top. Pretty much everything. Let's go ahead and get this copy of Shining Sark. We'll go Shining Sark. We'll activate the effect of our Gandora in hand, then activate the Gandora in order to send everything to the graveyard and summon out a Dark Magician, the Knight of Dark Magic. We'll go for the effect of Gadget Trio that is met with a Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit. A little too late. We can use Ties That Bind to grab Silent Swordsman 0 and Silent Magician 0 before getting in for Not Lethal, thanks to both the lack of OTK potential this deck has, and of course the Pot of Prosperity as well. We'll pass back to our opponent, who draws for turn an Effect Veiler, and looks like we have walked with this first one. They'll normally Effect Veiler, go into Anima, they'll activate the effect, but of course we can stop that targeting with our Silent Swordsman 0, and they'll concede. So it's time for game 2, and oh my god, what is this hand from both of us? Okay. Our opponent's going to set 3 and pass, unsurprisingly. We'll draw for turn, and no Sark access, huh? I guess we'll just fire off the Shifter and pass. Our opponent draws the Hallowed Azamina, still does nothing. And we find a Small World, which is at least a starter. We'll go Small World to bridge through this copy of Riseheart and then normal summon a Gadget Trio, activate the effect. Unfortunately, it's going to be met with an Imperm. No big deal. We can get in for 1300. That's something, right? We'll do that and then set 1 before proceeding to end phase. Our opponent draws for turn, and shoot, that does it. They're going to normal summon a copy of Poplar. We will Veiler it, and they will called by our Veiler. All right. Looks like we are playing Yu-Gi-Oh! Here today after all. They're going to go ahead and grab OSS, then activate OSS, sending the Poplar. They're going to go for Oak. They'll activate the effect of the Oak, targeting the Poplar. We will called by the Poplar. See? We're still playing Yu-Gi-Oh! Oh, then comes the Druid Swarm. Okay, they're going to go into Moon, into Requiem effect in order to grab a Lacrima. They'll go Lacrima in order to send the Fiendsmith, and then the Fiendsmith shuffling back the Moon. Afterwards, they can activate the Requiem, targeting the Fiendsmith, and the Fiendsmith's effect in order to send this Gadget Trio to the graveyard on the way to Sequence. Sequence here is going to go ahead and get Desiree, and I don't think they have too much to do afterwards. They'll special the Azure Rune before going to battle and hitting for, what is this, like 6,000? Okay, we are still alive, if nothing else. Then in main 2, they're going to go Promethean Princess. Sequence target Desiree, Promethean Princess, bring back this copy of Oak. Oak effect in order to grab Ash. Ash effect to grab nothing, because apparently they're not playing Birch. Makes sense. We'll go Turn Silence, which at least gets us to a position where we could win the game, but unfortunately Gadget Trio is immediately checked by this DSE Ray, and we're going to have to pass. All right, well, looks like when neither player finds what they're looking for, the one that's playing a good deck is going to prevail. Let's just go to game 3. So it's time for that all-important game 3, and oh, thank God, finally exactly what we're looking for. An opponent's hand that does something with a Dimension Shifter in our grip. Let's go ahead and fire it off. Our opponent's just going to pass here. We will draw for turn. Please be something. That is very something. We'll go for Shining Sark off the top, and then special summon a copy of Fenrir, Shining Sark in order to grab the Ties That Bind, and we will special out this copy of Dark Magician, the Magician of Black Chaos as well. We'll go for Ties That Bind here, the Gadget Trio and the Silent Magician 0. They're going to go Imperm, targeting the Gadget Trio. We will normal summon Swordsman 0, and please God, God, tell me this is lethal. Please, God, tell me this is lethal. I haven't counted. Please. Oh, thank God. Oh, we cannot beat that crackback. We did it! So we're back with the deck, and I'll be honest with you, we had to do a little bit of creative cutting to even produce a best of 3 that was watchable. Let's do the pros and cons. First, the pros. 1, this engine is main deck only, with no extra deck requirements. That means you get to play generic cards galore, or use Dogmatica cards or Super Polymerization for extra interrupts. 2, the cards we do have aren't bad. Gandora G is a full destroy and banish board wipe. This forces interrupts early and helps the rest of your combo get through. Turn Silence is a quick play that negates any monster effect it is played in response to if you control the Shining Sark and a Sark monster. Theoretically, Dark Magician can set any spell trap that mentions Dark Magician, which means out of the board you can be playing stuff like Destined Rivals or Secrets of Dark Magic to fuse off Gandora and use him for Dragoon. And 3, it can run Shifter. The only graveyard effect the deck has is Turn Silence Battle Skip, and it has no recovery, so banishing stuff is completely fine. And the cons. 1, the main con for this deck is that it's centralized around controlling one very specific card. Dark Magician and Gandora are complete bricks in hand if you can't find a way to Shining Sark. Sure, you have 9 copies of it in your deck, you've got Small World, but if you don't see it, the strategy does nothing. If you get hand trapped on Gadget, didn't see Future Silence, well, that's the end of your turn. As a result, you'll frequently be losing to 1 interrupt. 2, Shining Sark's built-in interrupt on graveyard summons requires you to discard a spell card. This is so frustrating. Why did it need to be this bad? Anyway, this means that sometimes it can be dead if you drew too many monsters or you're holding hand traps. Often you have this weird choice between hoping that power spells or maybe runics get you through going second or playing hand traps and just missing out on the effect. And 3, your end board isn't actually that great. Assuming we have all in-engine combo pieces, we get 1 Omni, 1 Monster Negate, and 1 Spell Negate with a Battle Phase skip if your opponent is illiterate and battles a Shining Sark monster while you have Sarcophagus on field. It's not awful, but many decks can break through that pretty easily. Speaking of breaking through, the deck also struggles with OTKing. Putting all your guys on board isn't enough to OTK without a Fenrir unless you use a Future Silence and give your opponent multiple cards to pump up your own Magician 0. Overall, Shining Sark seems to be the worst of the 2 nostalgia archetypes we've been saddled with lately. It's a very splashable engine, and it can be played with Dogmatica or Runic and all that jazz, but it just doesn't have a chance to shine anywhere in this current high-powered meta. So that's that. Thanks so much for watching. These videos are made possible by, and occasionally suggested by, my patrons, some of whom have paid a hefty sum to be mentioned at the end of this video. Let's do that now. Thanks so much to About 99 Donuts, Elena Tincher, Alex Perea, Allison Elliott, Ally, Brett Henry, Cool Name, Darkmaster Zork, Derp and Dragon, DJ Elefante, FPS Lord Derp, John Piet, Killer Croc 467, Night Mary, Legal Rights, Lockstone, Luis Hernandez, Lullaby of Souls, Master of Faster, Matthew M. Derezzo, MBT Play Madolci, Mike Carlotti, N54 Lionheart, Nacho Gonzalez, Naxi Juto, Nebula Yu-Gi-Oh!, Project Mercury, Rohan Doge, Rose Lapine, Soul, Troy Says By Erasure is Gay, Who's Nick, Wonder Waffle, and Yuki. Couldn't have done it without you. Everyone say rest in peace to that little puck light that fell directly into the toilet after I got that shot for the intro.